I'm Oprah as a dude, and I love you all. All right, here we go. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Reyes Reflection Podcast, where we are always free to subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on those socials at I'm Nathaniel Reyes. I got to plug in those partners real quick. A-Rave Cards, Jocko Fuel, Mad Rabbit Tattoo Aftercare, and Smackin' Sunflower Seeds. Click on my link tree for exclusive deals at those sites. Today's guest might have you scratching your head thinking, where have I seen this face before? Was it the hilarious yet relatable kid from a 90s sitcom? Or perhaps the snobby character from a Disney Channel classic? Or maybe you're a fan of his more recent work where he's left his mark on everything from sci-fi to primetime drama. This actor's career spans over multiple decades, genres, and characters, some endearing, some troublesome, but one thing I'd bet on is that you've seen him on your TV screen, you've either listened to an audiobook, or maybe you've opened up your Chick-fil-A app and has seen him. We're about to dive deep into the stories of his childhood stardom to modern-day life. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Zachary Bostrom. Welcome to the pod.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you so much for coming on, making time out of your busy schedule. I know you're a very, very busy man, so I appreciate you doing this.
Some days more than others,
Yes,
like us all.
For sure, for sure. Zachary, you're one of those characters that have started their acting very early in life. Can you share a little bit about your childhood and what led you to acting?
Of course. It's not that unique of a story. You know, my mom wanted to get me into modeling, so I did some, beauty contest things that were local. I won a pageant. One of the pageant directors was like, "Hey, you should get this kid into modeling and advertisement." And that was a big thing at that time. And so my mom checked into it, and I got an agent, and suddenly I was doing modeling stuff. Everything from J.C. Penney's to Fedco to all the big ones. I had billboards. I remember the shining moment when I was 3 or 4 years old was I had the largest billboard that was just outside of the Beverly Hills Mall. Now, of course, I'm blanking on what it was exactly, but all I remember was I was in a silly sailor's outfit holding a fake plastic lobster, so I think it was Fred Siegel or something like that. And then after that, while I was on set, one of the directors there was like, "Hey, he's got a pretty good personality. You should try commercials." And then it moved into commercials. And then the commercial people were like, "Hey, if your agent does film and television, you should be looking into being in that department as well." And so that's kind of how it just snowballed. And by 5, I was on my first television show, which was the Project Fame with Janet Jackson back in the day. So that was my first gig.
So your parents were really supportive, which is not really common with some parents, right? Like a lot of them will it's one or the other, right? They'll either really want to shelter them and not push them into it, or they really go, "All right, let's go ahead and do this." So your parents were full in, let's go do this.
My mom was always under the impression, "Hey, if you're loving it and you want to continue doing this, I'll go ahead and do it. But the moment you're not interested in it anymore, or the moment you want to pursue other avenues," like for quite a while, I was really focusing on if I wanted to get soccer scholarships. I went overseas and played for a little bit. So I was trying to figure out like my career path, and then also trying to go to college and do that at the same time as acting. So there was moments in my life where I would see if I wanted to dabble elsewhere, but I always ended up coming back to acting. And, my mom was very supportive and my family was very supportive that that's the path you're choosing, then, go for it.
Yep. So you said that you got your first gig at 5 years old. You got to work with an icon like Janet Jackson. Yeah. So as a child actor, during some pretty iconic TV shows, what was it like growing up on set? Because you don't have the traditional upbringing of a regular person. So what's it like growing up on set?
Yeah, I mean, by 10 years old, you're a fully functioning adult. I don't know if people that is just kind of one of the, I guess, pros and cons of being a child actor is that you are around adults. You are in a full-time job that is expected, what adults do. So you are becoming a mini functioning adult. So you're speaking like an adult, you're acting like an adult, you're putting in a lot of same hours as the adults, obviously much more condensed because you are a minor. You're doing school on set when you're not on set. So it's, just constantly working, working, working. Um, but, again, I was able to play with soccer and have a normal life outside of that it kept me a little more grounded and allowed me more of the opportunity of having a normal child life. I didn't really fall into the glitz and the glamour of the Hollywood parties and that kind of stuff in between. I was too busy with sports and friends that were outside of the business. So it's a balancing act for sure. But yeah, I mean, you're on set and you're just one of the same adult actors, just a mini version.
What position were you in soccer?
I started out in midfield, center midfield. Then I moved back to defensive midfield because I was slow. And then when I hit puberty and I started to gain speed, then I moved up into more of a withdrawn attacker. And then after I broke my leg and came back from that, I had done a lot of swimming as rehabilitation and I had leaned out and got a lot more fast twitch muscles. And so I moved up to striker position. So I was kind of all over the place.
Yeah, center mid, a lot of running. I played center mid 1 year of soccer, never played soccer again. That was a lot of running up and down the field for me.
It's nonstop and it's, a little break and then full gas, a little break, full gas, a little break, full gas. So,
Yep.
I mean, it'll keep you in great, great shape, but yeah, it's exhausting.
Yes.
So,
You know what else keeps you in great shape? You brought up swimming. Swimming keeps you in phenomenal shape. I did swimming 1 year as well. There's a pattern, right? Nathaniel tries a sport for a year, but I did swimming for 1 year, and I just felt like it was the hardest sport I've ever done. And it was the first time I realized that you can actually get dehydrated from swimming. You would think I'm in water, there's no possible way, but you're not drinking the water. And I got severely dehydrated in a
yeah.
swim practice because I was just going back and forth. We were doing our laps, and then by the end of it, I was like, "Oh my goodness, I'm gassed. I'm dead. I'm done." And so it's a phenomenal sport. There's a reason why a lot of those pro athletes and pro swimmers are very lean.
Yeah, no, I would 100%. I would say that if you're not a sports person and don't fall into like really loving to do something,
Yeah.
doing swimming as an exercise, if you can find yourself a pool, even if it's just like water aerobics, is by far and away the best exercise you can do. Full body resistance, non impact on the joints. I mean, it's just the only thing you can possibly probably say as a negative is overuse injuries in the shoulder if you're doing a lot of like freestyle or backstroke. So you've just got to be mindful of those things. But otherwise, yeah, I would say it's 100% the way to go. And I mean, you see swimmers' bodies; they're just jacked but lean at the same time. So
Yes.
the ideal physique.
Yes. No, most definitely. I'm just saying, my friend, so do you. You're in fantastic shape. Give me a
Thanks.
glimpse of your workout routine because I've seen pictures on Instagram. You are in phenomenal shape.
Well, I like yourself. I like to dabble in a lot of sports. So when I find something that I'm not necessarily great at, I love to just put in the effort and discipline and focus on it for a while until I'm a little above average. And if it becomes a passion, then I really deep dive into it. Lately, so about 2 years ago, I fell into the sport of duathlons. I was working with the some athletes and the U.S. national team with nutrition and strength training for them, and I got to go overseas as a coach. And I was doing a lot of training with my girlfriend of the time, who's now my wife, and she's like, you're training with me all the time. Instead of just coming and being my cheerleader, my strength coach and stuff, why don't you actually start competing? We'll have more fun. I was like, well, I've never really done it before. Sure, why not? How hard could it be? So after a year training with it, which, duathlons is you run, then you bike, then you run again. So it basically removes the aspect of swimming, which is your triathlon.
Yep.
And now I've moved a little bit away from that, and I've just been focusing a lot on the cycling aspect of it. So I'm competing in a couple different leagues and race leagues with a couple different people from all over the states and international a couple times a week. So I'll do strength training twice a week. I'll do biking 3 to 5 times a week. I'll go for long walks with my 2 dogs. I box. I do heavy weightlifting sessions along with calisthenics. So I'm all over the place in regards to my workout stuff, just to keep my body guessing and, just make sure there's no injuries involved.
Any cheat meals?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
What's your go-to cheat
I
meal?
don't call them cheat meals per se. I call them refeed meals because with the amount of calories that I'm burning when I'm doing, a 55 plus mile bike ride, I need just an excess of calories just to come back. My favorite cheat meal, ooh, I'm a sucker for bad like burgers and chili cheese fries. Or
Oh,
my favorite when I was living back in California, there was this place called Lucky Boys, and they have a pastrami burger, and then they have fried zucchini, and then a strawberry milkshake. And that was my go-to cheat meal. Was that, that's probably 5,000 calories right there. It's crazy, but it was so good, so worth it.
yes. I love that you said that it is a refeed, right? Like we need to
Yeah.
treat ourselves those. Yeah, I have them as well. Mine is always like I love fried pickles. I would say fried
Oh
pickles are my
yeah.
cheat. Like I
Yeah.
could house those babies. Yeah.
I
They're
found out
so good.
about those when I moved to the South, and I'm obsessed with them too. And I love that every place you go is a different kind of batter on it, whether it's like the
Yes.
breaded or it's the beer batter, or it's the panko. It's like you never know, or spears versus the slices. You never know what you're going to get. So it's always a
No.
fun treat to be like, I see it on the menu, I'm going to get it.
Yes.
So, yeah. So, what's your sport right now?
So, funny enough, you were talking about rehabilitation on your broken leg. I actually am in the process of rehabilitating a knee surgery that I had. It's my third
Ooh,
knee surgery, unfortunately. So, right now, I've been slowly progressing into the gym of trying to strength train that area again and retrain my mind because, you've had an injury, right? A lot of it is now trust, right? Now I got to trust myself
yeah.
that I can do it again. But prior to that, I had done everything. I had done Spartan races. I had done triathlons. I had done strength training. I had done boxing. You brought that up. I love boxing. I love the sport. I think it's phenomenal. Great cardio. You get in great shape. And so I'm similar to you of just I have a big plethora of today I feel like I want to try this. Today I want to try this. And I feel that it's also good for your mind and it's also good for your activity level because when you're active, sometimes it can be pretty grueling if you're just going to the gym, doing the same thing over and over. You like to mix it up. So I'm a big person that believes in mixing it up just because I find that it also helps you enjoy the exercises and it just trains different muscles and trains different aspects. Like the cardio that you do for boxing is going to be different than the cardio you do for swimming. It's just you're going to have a different level of endurance that you need. And so I love mixing it up and all that stuff. So once I get back into 100% after this current rehabilitation from this knee surgery, I will go back into everything under the sun. I love that. Yeah.
Nice. Well, good luck with that. That's I like you said, I know injuries. It's hard to come back from it, especially in the mental aspect of it. Trusting your body, not finding the injuries, jumping to the other side of the body because you're imbalanced, so your body's overcompensating to one side. Yeah, that whole mess, unfortunately, that comes with an injury.
Yeah. And it's really interesting how the body works because your body is trained to protect itself. And so, how you just mentioned, like, I noticed that I was overloading on my right side just because I didn't want to do anything on my left side. And I've been going to PT, and they're like, no, you got to start, balancing the weight because you're going to hurt yourself on your right side, your hip, your other knee, your ankle. It's just really, really interesting how our body is designed and programmed to defend itself and to protect
Yeah.
itself. And so, because of that, we sometimes are doing more harm because we think that we're protecting ourselves.
Yep, 100%. That's why one of the strength sessions a week I do is all preventative injury purposes. So
Mm,
since I'm focusing so hard on cycling right now, which is, your quads, your calves, and it's not getting as much of your posterior chain. Like most of my exercises are lateral movements, single leg movements, or posterior chain to make sure I shore up those imbalances that I don't go for a jog and suddenly I'm, yanking a hamstring because all I've been focusing on is quad, 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 you know? So
Did you go to school for any of this stuff, or is this just all
Yeah.
stuff that you learned? Okay, yeah, I was gonna say your
Yeah.
dialogue is very advanced.
Yeah. So I have certifications and licenses in sports performance, preventative injury, and nutrition for sports and athletes, strength training for youth. I kind of dabbled when things are slow in the business, you have to have a side hustle. And because I had the background of going for professional soccer, I already had a lot of the knowledge when it came to athletics. And given I have to be in a certain kind of shape for a lot of my projects anyway, it seems like every other project is kind of like, hey, let's see you with your shirt off. So, when you're training like that regularly, you start to pick up things, but then it's like, well, I would rather know the full science of this. And then it just so happened that my church at the time in Pasadena wanted to find somebody that could do like a group activity kind of community session. And I was like, hey, I'll do something like that. And then that grew into other people asking me, hey, do you do private stuff? And I was like, well, I'm certified to, but I don't really do it. It was more just for my own benefits and knowledge. And then that just, again, the dominoes where then one person knew somebody and they're like, they have a position at this club if you want to work out. It's this private club. You would be training, specifically for sports, tennis, golf, etc. I'm like, sure, why not? I can make my own hours. I can go in super early in the morning if I'm on a project like quite a few times. I was filming like Code Black and a bunch of other projects where I was like, okay, I have to take the week off, guys. I will send you to another trainer, or we'll just double up the week before, the week after. It made it very easy for me to move stuff around in order to do both at the same time.
You brought up church. Is your faith something that's very important to you?
Um, Not as much as it used to be, I would say. It was for a while in my life, and then I feel like it became kind of more personal. My personal relationship and holding myself accountable to my own morals, ethics, code, in a sense, versus the community of the church. Like so many other people, there's been good and bad experiences when it comes to the church. It's not so much religion per se, but it's the people in the religion that either turn you on or off to it. So I had a few really unfortunate events with
Yep.
people that kind of turned me off of the community aspect of it. So I kind of turned it more inward and focused more inward. So
Yes.
that's kind of where I stand now, I guess you could say. But during that period of time, I was heavily involved and I loved the community aspect, especially me being able to do a workout class that started with 2 people one day a week and then turned into 35 people, age ranges from like 12 years old to 85, in this group class that we did 2 times a week. And it was not only church members, but it was people all around Pasadena that walked by and saw a sign and then walked in one day and then told their friends and their friends and their friends, and it grew. So that was really kind of fun and an aspect that you don't necessarily see unless it's brought from a church environment, I guess you could say.
Yes. Like all things, there's pros and cons. And I love what you said because I feel like that's the same with me. I grew up heavily religious, and I would say I'm pretty religious now, but again, it's inward. And I love that because you find a lot self analyzing and reflecting and embracing yourself and working towards goals within yourself. And you're right. Like, I'm the same way. I've had negative experiences. I've had positive ones, but I've had negative experiences in my church growing up that have turned me away. And I find that you hear so many people who have that similar experience. They have a negative experience with a church that they went to and it turns them away. But I'm glad that you stayed on some path and that you are at least doing your own inward work where some people completely turn away. And that breaks my heart more just because for me it's like you said, human element to it. Humans are always going to mess up. They're always going to make mistakes. They're always going to have You're always going to have some disagreement with somebody that's going to upset you.
Yeah.
But if you focus on the inward relationship, you can't really mess that up because that's between you and God. And so I love that you said that because that is all me. That's what I preach. I love that stuff because I've just had those bad experiences as well. And I was actually having a conversation last night about how when people believe in God, they believe that they're up here and everybody else is down here. And I like to live in the life of how Jesus met everybody down here. He didn't think he was up here and wanted everybody to come to him. He met he met people where they were at. So I love that. I'm glad that that has been the same path. It sounds like it's the same path for you as well, that you focus on a more inward journey. And I hope that others do that as well. I just want to plug that in. You brought up your dogs in an earlier part of the conversation. Talk to me about your fur babies, because I love dogs as well.
They're my girls. So I had a wonderful dog, as we all have, that unfortunately passed away after a lot of fights with cancer, and we had to amputate her leg and things of that nature. And after you lose a pup, you're always like, oh, that's the last one. I can't go through that heartbreak again. And then 3 months later, you're like, oh, the house is so quiet. Like, I'm off schedule with my routines in the morning. I'm not going for my walks. Like, what am I going to do? Where's my cuddle buddy at night? So they kind of fell into my lap that I found this perfect pup. She is a cross between an Australian Shepherd and a Bernese Doodle. So she is a trifecta of craziness. I call her Animal because, especially when she was growing up, she had the fur that was just everywhere all at once, and she looked like a cross between Animal and Grover, like the way she looked. So she just turned a year old, and I've always wanted the opportunity to have two dogs. I've never had that opportunity. I've never had the space or yard or anything. And I've been fortunate enough now to my newest home has a large backyard that I was able to get a fence into to have two puppies. And the person that I got the Australian Doodle Alia from, she's like, would you consider doing a guardianship? And I was like, yeah, that would be great. I've always wanted to have a sister for, my pup. And this would be a perfect opportunity to help you find a home for this pup, since, you can't have another at the moment in time. But yeah, so it just worked out. And she's a full Bernese, already 75 pounds, I think. And she's like just turning 8 months. So she's a monster, but in a good way. So yeah. Yep. So those are my two girls.
She's a tank. Yes.
Oh,
Already
yeah. And she's
75 pounds.
just solid. I mean, but she doesn't realize her size. So she just she plays what I call the trust game on you all the time, where she'll just be standing up and just fall. And it's 75 pounds of just slamming down on you. Like, you can't do that. Like, you're too heavy to just fall on me,
Yes.
So, but she's a sweetheart. She's a cuddler. She will just lay on you all day long and be happy and content. So, but yep. So those are my girls.
I have a black lab mix, and he's the same way. He doesn't know his size. He will always want to lay on my lap. And I'm like, dude, you are 85 pounds. You can't just throw your weight around the way that you do. And he always has to be around me. If he wasn't locked up for bed right now, he would try to put his head on my knee. He would lay by my feet. He always, it's like he needs to touch me. But I love dogs because, one, my personality matches the dogs in the sense of I love people. I love interacting with people. So do dogs, most dogs. And I just find them the most loyal, loving animals in the world. I unfortunately lost one of my dogs a few years back, and I went through that same phase where I was like, there's nobody that can replace her. And then, like you said, then the house gets a little empty, and you realize that they're so good for mental health. They're so good for just going outside. Like you said, having an excuse to go outside, have some sun. Even if it's raining, rain or shine, you get to go outside with them and you get fresh air. They love it. And they're just so they're so amazing. I love dogs, and I know there's people that aren't dog people, but I don't really trust them. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
No, I understand. Yeah, if my dog doesn't like you, you got that. There's my first red flag.
Yes,
especially these two, because they just love everything and everybody. So it's like, if they're hesitant at all, it's like, why are you hesitant? Like, you love everybody,
Yep.
But no, I agree. It's hard to have a bad day or continue to have a bad day when you just have this unconditional love just thrust upon you. You know what I mean? You can't help but smile when they're goofy. And yeah, I just, like you said, for mental health and just general well-being,
Yes.
you can't beat it.
No.
So
When they have the zoomies and they have their
oh,
little like run around freakouts, and at the time it drives you crazy, but then you can look back and laugh at it. Like it's just the little things that they do, and then just their little mannerisms. Like I've had I had two childhood dogs. I had the one that I just referenced that passed away, and now I have two currently. And it's so funny how they're all different. They all have different
yeah.
personalities. They all do weird, quirky things. And it's also funny to see how they will then copy the other one and do the same quirky things, but it's in their own way. They're just so hilarious. Like they're amazing. They're amazing. I could go all day because of how much I love them, and it's indescribable how amazing the impact dogs have on people. And I'm sorry to hear about your dog. It sounds like you did the best that you could to give her a beautiful life. And and like that movie All Dogs Go to Heaven, I believe I'll see my dogs again and run around with them.
What a day
Yeah,
that'll be, man. Yeah.
seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to
Definitely.
circle back into your acting. Did you get
Yeah.
recognized a lot as a child star? How did you handle fame as a kid?
Yeah, I did. I did. Especially when I was doing commercials and things of that nature, because of the nature of commercials where it's just in everybody's face over and over and
Yeah.
over again. It's not like now with streaming where it's not as often that you're bombarded with the same commercials, but I guess you are now that ads are back into all streaming platforms. But um, constantly with that. Or when I would do a project like Who's the Boss or Full House or any of those that were really popular at the time, guaranteed I would be at Disneyland or out and about and get recognized. It
Yeah.
still happens to this day. Ironically, the like what you mentioned, you look familiar. You have a familiar face. Johnny Tsunami still obviously gets a ton of hits. I guess I still somewhat look like my character Brett without the highlights and the hair, but that tends to get recognized, especially within a certain age group. My age group and a little bit younger all seem to 100%. That would be the thing that I would say that they recognize me from. And then earlier, if I mentioned like Harry and the Hendersons and stuff, but obviously I looked much different then, seeing I was 10 years old. But a lot of people know about that and they're like, oh my gosh, I remember this, or I remember that, or they'll IMDb me after meeting me and then be like, oh, that was what I remembered you from. That was the show. I was obsessed with that show. You were on that show. I remember you. You did da 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 da. So yeah, it was interesting. It was fine. I mean, when I was younger, obviously I was with my mom, so she would protect me from you know things if there were any, but I never had any bad experience in that regards. I guess my only bad experience would come from when I was in public school and I was on a few shows. There were some kids that were bullies and a bit jealous of what I was doing, but
Yeah.
that happens everywhere. Now you have trolling online instead of in-person bullies as much, but
Yeah.
still not really. Honestly, my experience with public school, because of how much I was working, I ended up having to go to independent study and then eventually into homeschooling because I just could not get the curriculum and I couldn't be a part of any school because I was on set so often.
Yeah.
So that removed that aspect of the negative stuff when it came to public school there, even though thankfully through soccer and other stuff, I was able to still have a connection with a bunch of my peers that were my age and still go to proms and dances and all the other football games and all that kind of stuff that I would normally do there. But yeah, being recognized was it was fun. It's always fun. I don't care what it is they recognize. It's always interesting to hear what they recognize me from. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, because you have a really, really big portfolio of work that you've done. You've done episodes here, episodes there. Like I said, you worked with Janet Jackson, John Lithgow. You've worked with some really, really big names in the industry. So I'm sure that somebody's like I said in the intro, scratching their heads, being like, I've seen him before. I may not know where, but I've seen him before. Yes.
Yeah.
And like myself, I was like, oh, that's the guy who played in Johnny Tsunami. He was the dirtbag, the man. great guy. It's all acting.
No,
It's
I love it. The more negative things people can say about that, the better I did, clearly,
that's
So,
I mean, that's true. That's 1,000% true. There's a lot of intangibles with acting. So I have an IMDb page as well, not as eclectic as yours. I was on one small film. And it's funny because when I auditioned to be the good guy. I wanted to be the main character that was good. And then I do the audition. I thought I hit it out of the park. I get a call later that night, and they're like, hey, we want you to be a part of the film. I'm like, that sounds great. We want you to be the bad guy, though. And I was like, wow, this is because, you know, I don't know if you can relate to this. Everybody loves the good guy, but it's kind of fun playing the bad guy at times. And so that was a character that I really had to learn. And it's not a good film. There's a lot of things that I didn't know at the time, like continuity, like, hey, if my hand's in my pocket on this scene, I have to keep it in my pocket if we reshoot. Like, there's a lot of things that I didn't know about the industry. Like, a lot of people, I feel like, don't give it credit. I think they just think you turn up on set, you say a few lines, you go home. No, and that was a small project, but the amount of times we had to reshoot because we're filming outside and there's a helicopter that flew over, or whatever the case may be. Like, there's just so many little things that happen, and you think that you're just on set for maybe an hour. You're on set all day. I think you more so than me, but that one project I was in, I was on set for maybe 8 to 10 hours a day, and we were filming at night at times, and I don't think I left the set till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning just because they wanted to get it right. And so it's tough. It's tough. It's not like you just show up and say a few stuff and you go home like people think. You really are working. It's work, and it's mentally exhausting. But yeah, playing the bad guy, man, that was fun. That was a fun experience. I didn't expect it. I wish I could redo it now because there's a few things that I learned afterwards. Like I said, the continuity, but even just things that you could do with your face to help you really sell that. There's a few tricks of the trade I wish I had known back then, what I know now, but I guess that's all part of life, right? You do the best that you can at the time.
Yeah, every time you get on a project, you're learning something new, and you look back, and obviously we are our hardest critics, so we're going to catch things that no one else would.
Yes.
But seeing those things, especially if we're repeating those, I guess you could say, habits, gets us aware of them, so then we don't do them necessarily on the next project or the next audition and things like that. I always recommend anyone who has no idea of the industry to try and find a background role so they can be on set, so they can really see, like you said, the amount of work that actually, the number of people and the amount of work that goes into a single day of shooting, which may only be 3 scenes.
Yes.
Depending on if it's a film versus television, depending on the time frame, you have soaps, which are just, they are banging out 2 episodes a day. So you can imagine how much you're getting through as quickly as possible. Then you have feature films where they will focus on maybe a scene or 2 the entire day because they have so many shots and so many different points of view for that scene that they are doing, and they're on location. So, okay, we're only going to be able to film in this location for the day. There you go. And then television, you're on a sound stage. So we might get, 5 or 6 to 10 to 15 scenes, just depending on the project, depending on if it's a half an hour sitcom versus an hour long kind of drama.
Yep.
So, there's just so many differences in regards to that kind of stuff. And like you said, the technical in regards to continuity, a lot of times the smaller the film, the less people are on set. So normally when you would have like a script supervisor coming in and reminding you, hey, the glass, or you touch the glass over here, and then you had the props master going, okay, that glass was half full, I need to refill it to half full because you took a sip this time. You have to, and then as an actor, you're remembering all those things, but then the DP or the lighting guys are being like, okay, we need you to cheat this way so the light is hitting you from this way, we need you to hit this mark. But then you're also like, oh, I gotta remember the 5 lines. And then the writers are like, oh wait, we're gonna change these 2 lines because they're gonna be funnier, and this is a brand new set of lines that you've never had before than what you learned. Or the director's like, hey, let's just riff a little, let's just go off a book. And you're like, okay, I gotta remember to hit this mark, look this way, sit down here, drink here. And then ad lib at the same time. There's a lot of different things than simply, like you said, showing up, memorizing your lines and regurgitating them, and then, hey, I'm going home, you know?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think doing some background work is helpful because I did some of that as well. And like you said, being on set, it's hard because you got to work here, you got to work there. If you're not SAG, SAG people leave early. People
Mhm.
who are non-union stay later. Like there's a lot that goes on in it, and it's not just like I said. You say lines, you go home. There's so much to it, and so I give so much credit and so much respect for people who are on set, and everybody has a job, and every role is crucial to that film or that TV show or whatever
Oh
the
yeah.
case may be. If it was a bigger project, maybe I would have had somebody say to me, "Hey, you had your hand in your pocket." You know what I mean? And like those are things now I know. Okay, I have to consciously know I had my hand in my pocket. I got to keep it in my pocket when I reshoot. And so there's just a lot of things that people don't realize, but I give a massive, massive amount of respect for people like yourself and for others that are in the industry as well. It's no small feat for sure.
There are pros and cons. There are things that, your wheelhouse would be different than somebody else's wheelhouse. Somebody else would may be much better in certain areas, and being an actor, you have to be better in certain areas.
Yep.
As an actor, you kind of get to dabble a little bit more into jack of all trades of things because you are pretending to be this person or that person. So you have to know about this line of work or that line of work or how that person would hold themselves. It's I would say a little more fun playing pretend. But there is the technical side of it when you get on set that, those are kind of uncompromising skills that you have to have in order
Yeah.
to succeed and be successful. And again, the smaller the project, and even not necessarily the smaller the project, but just being a guest star on set, you won't necessarily always get the help from somebody behind the because they're so busy doing everything else and also looking after the main cast members that as a guest star you've got to jump in there and you just got to be on top of your game because you're not going to necessarily get that help and they're not going to have the time to help you with that, so it's expected to you to have some of those qualities already under your belt and use it.
And be sharp, be on top of your game. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hmm.
As previously mentioned, I've heard that you're on the Chick-fil-A app. Is this true?
Yeah. Yeah. So I did a media campaign for Chick-fil-A last year. And it was a variety of video and media stuff. And they basically, I was a Chick-fil-A employee for like half of the shoot, and then just a normal person for the other half. So I've seen myself on a couple of their individual media ad campaigns on like Instagram, at specific stores, the app, sometimes online on their webpage. I saw my hand at one point in some advertisement. I was like, oh, that was when we were at the table. There I am. So yeah, it's been all over the place. I'm not sure if that ad campaign is still going because I said it was about a year old, but I know they said they were going to use a lot of it for, like you said, the app and for their media in-house campaign. So like their training stuff. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's in their literature that way. So if there's Chick-fil-A employees, they probably have seen a lot more too.
The day a Chick-fil-A employee comes up to you and says, "Hey
I know,
Zach,
right?
I saw you. You taught me how to do the fries."
Right.
That then I think you've heard it all, right?
Probably. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I hadn't done modeling and modeling stuff and ads like that since I was a baby. I just don't. There's a very specific like frame that they want you when it comes to the modeling aspect of things, and I just I don't have the statistics for that. They want always somebody over 6 foot and X, Y, and Z, all these check marks, and I just don't hit all those boxes per se.
Yeah.
Um, and it got in the way of doing the things I really love, which is your commercials and television and films that you kind of have to pick. So coming back to that and circling back around and doing a few modeling, things like for Chick-fil-A and Tifosi Optics was kind of cool. It was a little heyday kind of thing.
Yeah. Let's dive into some of your career highlights now. You're best
Sure.
known for your role as Ernie Henderson in Harry and the Hendersons. You worked with a pretty iconic franchise, the Bradys, a very Brady Christmas. What are some of these experiences like when you're working with such strong franchises in media?
At the time, obviously, when you're filming it, you don't necessarily see how big it's going to be. When I filmed on like Full House or Very Brady Christmas or Hearing the Hendersons, I had an understanding that yes, it was probably going to be. This was a big project, Johnny Tsunami. You could tell by the magnitude when you were on set and the amount of money that was going down to and how Disney was promoting these sort of films of the month that this is going to be big. Is it going to be good? Our audience is going to be liking it? Don't know.
Yeah.
But this should be pretty cool nonetheless. The Brady Christmas and some of the ones that have followed me around, it's crazy to think of when they kind of circle back around. The Brady's was especially, I have good and bads, unfortunately, with that, only because I had strep throat at the time. I was coming off of strep throat, so I felt miserable. In fact, I had a lot more scenes that they had to cut out because I was sick, unfortunately.
Oh,
but
man.
getting to meet all those iconic people, they were so amazing to work with. The cast of Full House, I still remember certain things that, I was told while on set technically to make sure that I did in order to be, at my best look for the camera that I still remember to this day when it comes to stuff. Uh, Johnny Tsunami was another amazing one just because of not only the experience of filming it, but then afterward, all the stuff we did promoting wise and advertising for Disney, and then the resurgence of Johnny Tsunami because of streaming, where everybody got to review it and kind of bring their kids into, oh, this is the movie I grew up with. And I feel like for the most part, Johnny Tsunami, thankfully, with snowboarding, still holds some relevance. It isn't as dated as some of the other, Disney movies of the week. So a new kind of generation has really jumped onto it, which is cool to see. But yeah, you never really know what's going to catch on, even if you kind of have this underlying feeling of, okay, this is going really good. This is a really good script. You never know until it's really finished. Is this going to really take off? Because as an actor, you've worked on projects where you are like, this is going to be awesome. And then you're completely cut, or you're cut down to such a small size that it's like, oh, well, I'm not even really in it anymore. Or it just bombs, or it never even sees the light of day. And you're like, well, okay.
Yeah. No, I've said that to people. I've been on pilot episodes that never even saw air. And I don't think people realize that there's so many things that go into a production before it even sees air. And yeah, I've recorded 2 pilot episodes where I was supposed to be in it. I said lines and everything. I was like, "Oh, this is going to be great." And never saw it. And
It's completely out of your hands. You have no idea. I mean, you can't do anything about it. You'll probably never even see the footage you did to know, oh, did I put out a good performance, or can I use it for my reel? Or, you have it as a credit, but it's like if nobody can view it, it's not really a useful credit per se.
Nope.
So
it's somewhere in the ether, and I don't know where it is. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah. You're right about that. Yeah, and you're right about also just not knowing how big something can take off, especially now with social media, right? Like on TikTok, somebody can put a clip up of a movie that maybe was filmed in 1997. Nobody has heard of it. And then all of a sudden it takes off. People are like, what's this movie? And now it's generated enough interest. Same thing with music, same thing with commercials. Like, you never know what's going to take off. And now I think with the power of social media, like we said earlier, there's pros and cons. One of the pros I find is that you see these low budget films being taken off and being a success now because of social media, the power of social media. But in your case, I feel like you got to have a little bit of luck in life. And I think for you hit it right on where you were able to be in such well-known productions, and maybe your performance wasn't as good as you wanted it to be, but the fact that hey, I was in Full House, I was in Scream Queens, Will and Grace, like you were in a lot of things that
Yeah.
a big audience has seen. It's not just Johnny Tsunami. Yes, that's where I recognize you from because I grew up on that. I was 7 years old. And like you said, at the time, Disney was doing these Disney Channel original films once a month. Everybody was sitting at home watching. It wasn't the streaming services that you have now where you have 40 different TV shows every week. It was, you really had a small option. And I feel like that in some ways that, I miss that. Like, I miss that feeling that everybody grew up watching the same things or knowing the same movies, TV shows, etc. But yeah, I grew up watching it, but you're right. Like, now because of streaming, some 10-year-old can pop that on, and that's almost a 20-year. Is it? No, it's almost a 30-year film at this point. Yeah.
Let's see. I was 18. Yeah, it's going on. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for dating me. Appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Hey, in fairness, I dated myself too. I'm over 30 now. I'm old. I'm old now. I'm not a kid anymore. But I watched you as a kid, right? And so now you're going to be etched in history because people are just going to be able to put on a streaming service and watch something that you were in. So you had some pretty memorable moments, like you said, filming Johnny Tsunami.
Yeah,
Green.
CSI, all the soaps, Bold and the
Yeah.
Beautiful, Young and the Restless,
Yeah.
Training Day, Timeless, um, Code Black.
Yep.
Gosh, yeah, I've been very fortunate to get on some very good shows, especially shows that were hot at the time.
Yep.
So they were good guest star or recurring guest star roles.
Yes. Yes. We just talked about how your career has probably been about 30 years. Let's say there. How has the acting in today's landscape changed from when you first started and as you grew up in it? Because you said you were 18, so you were a full-on adult at that point. How has it changed from then to now?
On set or like pre-production, post-production, what
That's a good
because
follow-up.
obviously there's a
Y-
lot when it comes
Yeah.
to.
Let's go with on set and then let's go
Okay.
with auditioning and post-productions.
Okay. On set really still feels the same. Obviously, a lot of the technological stuff has changed a bit,
Yeah.
but for the most part, you're still mic'd up the same way. It's just a smaller mic, or you'll have your boom operator. Cameras have obviously changed a lot. Every project still prefers to use their different specific cameras. There are still cameras that are old school that I remember seeing in the 80s. For example, when I was on set at daytime television, and they still have the cameras that are on wheels that move about, as they're filming, because that's just the style of production because they edit on the fly. So they'll have the four cameras and they will be, the person in the booth will be editing and changing things around. Obviously, the editing tools for them has gotten a lot more streamlined, but for the most part, other than if you're doing a lot of green screen, like obviously now on set, so much is green screen or motion capture. A lot of times, as you've probably seen with the behind the scenes of like Disney and stuff, you'll go into one of their main studios and it will be nothing but green screen behind you.
Yeah.
It'll just be one gigantic green screen. You'll have no idea the landscape you're in. There'll be blocks that will be specific things that are your eye lines and stuff like that. But otherwise, it is completely up to your imagination. So instead of filming on location and actually kind of seeing these things or having a set built where you see these things and you're really engrossed in it. For example, like I love seeing the behind the scenes of the Nosferatu because they built the castle. So the actors lived in the castle and acted in the castle instead of, okay, there's a green screen. You're in a castle, everybody. Let's pretend. There's something about that that just adds to your performance when you are in something you can visually see versus having to imagine it and put it into your mind space each time.
Yep.
As far as the biggest change I've seen is probably definitely in the audition aspect. And a lot of this came about more so because of COVID, but is the audition process now 99% virtual. Everything is cast at least the first and possibly even your second call, and maybe even your main callback to a Zoom meeting or you submitting video. So there's no longer the in-person auditions. Even very rarely is there an interaction back and forth like you and I are having. It is, I am submitting something, I send it to the ether, I hope it's viewed. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. I have no way of knowing. I have no way of getting any feedback. I have no way of adjusting my performance right then and there on the spot to prove to the casting that I can take directions or that I can do it a different way. There's a lot in that aspect that has now changed and evolved to make casting more streamlined and faster. But I feel like a lot of things are getting left behind because of that, unfortunately. And for somebody like me that's more old school, that I like being in a room. I like using charisma and I like using the technical advantages I have of having a 40-year career of being able to, you tell me how you want this done and I will change it on a dime to what you want to see. So I can show you that if a director wants to have something changed or a writer gives me a new line, it's not going to make me stumble when I'm on set, which you can't tell that from an in-person, or excuse me, a non-in-person audition. From a video, you have no idea when I submit a video, how many takes did it take for me to get to that point? Can I take any direction whatsoever and change how I'm performing, or am I locked in with blinders on how I'm reading this? So that is probably one of the biggest aspects that's changed regarding then versus now. And then post, I would say post is still about the same. You still have your ADR or voiceover stuff you'll do at the end. Like you were saying, you were shooting at night with helicopters and all sorts of things. There's a lot of noise. We'll go in post-production. We'll redub that line. And that's all about the same.
Yeah, it sounds like that there's a lot that has changed, though, from when you first started, and mostly with the auditioning process. And you're right. Like, there are times where I've done an audition, and there's value with going in, shaking hands with everybody, greeting everybody, showing them your personality, how you would be on set. There's just
who you are.
Yes, there's a value to that. And I think that, unfortunately, because of COVID, I think that's probably the biggest unfortunate contributor to why it's pivoted into this direction. But also convenience, right? Like, it's probably like, do I really want to go ahead and rent out an area to have a bunch of auditions? But I just feel like that you can get lost in the sauce by that, right? Like, if you've got thousands of interviews being emailed to the same one, there's a few that's bound to be spam, there's a few that's bound to be accidentally deleted. Like, there's just, in my opinion, and I could be wrong because it's just an opinion, in my opinion, there's just more room for error that way. And I find that there is a value of having, let me meet you, let me see who I'm going to be working with, right? And so that's got to be one of the toughest things for you, just how you started, and that's how you got your gigs, was meeting these people, showing them this is how I'm going to be on set, showing your personality, winning them over with your charisma and your attitude and your work ethic. That doesn't get seen by a Zoom audition or a phone recording. It really doesn't, and that's just, respectfully, that's my opinion. Yeah. So I
get it.
Understand it.
It makes casting so much easier. I mean, let's face it, if you're blocking out a half an hour for each actor to come in and see them in person versus able to see 5 actors in a half an hour span because you get videos, you're looking at the range of actors and actresses that a casting director can see people, which means instead of it being an audition where they reach out to each agent and are like, send me your top 3, and then no one else ever gets seen in that agency because they only have the amount of time. Now it's like, send us 10 people to audition for this. So there is a more broad general range of amount of people that get to be seen. But like you said, it's the quality versus quantity. And also, just like you said, so many sets now have the no a-hole on policy kind of thing. You can't get that from just submitting a video. You can't really see who that person is or how they're going to interact, or are they going to become offended if you tell them to change something, or are they going to be able to take direction? All those sorts of things are lost when it comes to it. And again, I'm older, so I like interacting, personally versus through an app or through, things of that nature. I would like to meet people organically versus swiping left or right, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But again, social media and the internet and all those sort of technological advances has helped the industry in so many ways. It's a double-edged sword. I mean, the
Yes.
argument can go both ways 100%, especially coming from an actor's perspective versus a casting director's perspective versus the entire production.
Mm-hmm. It truly is a catch-22. It's a double-edged sword, as you mentioned. It's a 50-50 issue, and like you said, I find myself as an older soul who appreciates the value of a face-to-face interaction, who appreciates the value of getting to know somebody, having a conversation we did before we even started. There's truly a value in that I find that you need that, and it helps maintain relationships and build. But like you said, you can get through a whole lot more interviews if you're like, send me your best work set in 5 minutes. Oh, boom, 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 boom. By the end of the day, you probably have seen 4 or 5 times more than what you would have been. So, like you said, it's a double-edged sword. Like anything in life, there's pros and cons. And so I guess that's just the way that the industry is now, and you just have to pivot, right?
Yeah, you just roll with it, and you're constantly adapting, just like you would with training or anything like that. The newest form of science is going to give you, something that when we were younger, we all did static stretching before we warmed up, and now it's like, oh, don't do that. That's the worst. Like time out. That's no. Now it's all, let's do dynamic stretches before, let's
Yeah.
pretend that you're going to go through the movements you're actually going to do in a game situation. And there's almost this negative aspect to static stretching on whether or not it's helpful in any regards. So obviously everything changes, and you just kind of evolve and go with it. I've had great experiences and I've had negative experiences with videos. I've had, you get put on a short list sometimes for something and I've gotten called back on things a year later because they did actually see an audition.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I thought I was going to get that audition. It was like, no, we loved you, but it still put me on the short list that the next time they cast something, they knew of me and they're like, oh, we saw that video a year ago, 6 months ago, 3 months ago. We want to cast you for this now. And it's like, oh, okay, so you did actually watch my video. It didn't just go to the void. So I mean, it is still there. It is still have its pros, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Before we wrap up with our burning questions, I have one more question for you, and it's kind of related to what you just said about how sometimes you put an audition out and you don't hear anything back for a year. I've gone on auditions and have been told, you're great, but you just don't have the look. So, what's a piece of advice that you would give to someone who's trying to get into this space, in this field, and they just keep being told no, and they're discouraged, or even just how to start into this career? How would Zach help somebody getting into this space?
Well, I mean, one of the things that any actor, new or old, constantly deals with is the rejection aspect of this business. If you don't have a thick skin, then this isn't the business for you. If you can't handle rejection, you can't handle people giving you their opinion of you, um, and that offends you or hurts your feelings, then this probably isn't the best business for you, because you're always going to have somebody that gives you their opinion. But you have to remember, it's their opinion. What that casting director or that director says doesn't necessarily encompass who you are or what's actually happening. Is there some validity to what they're saying, that you could do X, Y, and Z a little better, and you need to take that into account? Maybe. But when it comes to something as subjective as a look, I mean, I've lost projects because I don't have brown eyes and I have blue, and it's like, well, you've never heard of contacts. I have long hair versus short. Oh, we can't cut my hair. So that sort of stuff is gonna get on your nerves. Then that's just how it goes.
Yep.
So I would definitely say, get used to learning the dialogue, doing the absolute best you can, and then just letting it go, because it's not up to you. And I would say 90% of the time, it has nothing to do with your performance. There's something else. There is a look that they're looking for. There is a demeanor that they're looking for. There are just different things that they're looking for that have nothing to do with how you are as an actor in regards to your technical performance, but something else. So you don't get it, not because you suck. You just don't get it because of XYZ, etc. I mean, who knows? They might not have even seen your tape.
Yeah.
So, you can't take everything so personal when it comes to that kind of stuff. If you want to get better, then obviously you got to put in the work. So workshops, etc. Those are places you need to have a space that you can work on camera, off camera. You can do scene study, you can do audition studies, and you can work on whatever aspect that you feel that you are weak in and build those strong points up. So you are a better, well-rounded actor or actress when you are ready for auditions. So you stay also sharp. So when you do have an audition, let's say there's a lull between auditions and suddenly you're giving the most amazing project you really want, but you haven't acted for the last 2 months because you haven't done another audition since then, you're not stumbling on that audition. You are sharp and ready to go. So you wouldn't expect to play the cello or something if you practice once a month. You've got to keep working that repetition and keep working and finding those areas in your performance that might be weak, or you might have weird tics or things that you wouldn't necessarily recognize that somebody else does that you can address.
I love that. Thank you so much for giving some advice. All right, so we're going to wrap up with some fun burning questions then.
Okay.
If you could trade places with any character that you've played for a day, who would you choose?
Ernie Henderson. I mean, getting to hang out a day with Bigfoot. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the mythological creature come to life. That would be, that's, there's a no-brainer there. I mean, I've done some amazing roles with characters that were really cool that I would love to live in their lifestyle. But yeah, meeting a Bigfoot, come on.
Yeah. What's the weirdest food combo you love?
Oh, I'm a billy goat. So you put salt on it and I'll probably eat a table. There's nothing I don't eat. I mean, literally, I'm nicknamed the garbage disposal by my friends because if they won't eat it, give it to Mikey. Weirdest combination. My wife loves this one. I eat the skin off of a kiwi. So I'll eat the whole kiwi.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, that I just had one last night, so that came to mind. I will combo anything. There's nothing weird. Like I'll have barbecue with like pasta with there's no combination on my plate, which I won't. I will have yogurt with strawberries along with, potato chips and then, sour pickles. And then it just put it all in front of me. It doesn't matter.
Okay. I know if I'm ever in an eating competition, I know who I'm calling. Okay.
There you go.
What's the most ridiculous thing you've ever convinced someone to believe?
Oh boy. So I had a friend of a friend who really wanted to meet me and talk with me because they recognized me from stuff and they were, huge fans of Johnny Tsunami and actually the Power Rangers, which I had a brief recurring stint on there. Long story short with that, I was supposed to be the Red Power Ranger, but the contract didn't work out. So then they brought me on as a recurring role. So I got to still be on Power Rangers, just not as the Power Ranger. Yeah. So they were talking to me and they're like, well, I can't believe, your age, you look great for your age. Like you look our age. I'm like, okay, thanks. I look young for my age. That's been a great trait of mine thus far in the industry. They're like, what do you do? I was like, well, I take, KY jelly and Vaseline every night and I put it all over my face as a mask. And then I wake up and I gave them this extravagant story of all these health routines I did. Totally joking. I thought I was being joking enough that they would catch on to it. But my friend told me the next day that on their way home, they had to stop at a CVS and pick up Vaseline and KY jelly and all the items that I listed for my skin and hair routine that they were then going to follow. I was like, okay, you need to let them know before they start doing this. That was just totally being a joke. Like, no, that's not at all what I do. So, yeah.
It was all satirical. Yeah.
It was all just a big gag. And again, I thought that I was being, I guess, yeah, a little too serious.
You're that good of an actor that you convinced
There you go.
them. Yes.
There you go. Yeah.
I'm going to set the stage for you, okay? You're at a wedding.
Okay.
The crowd forms a circle. You get pushed in. What is your go-to dance move?
Oh, man. Definitely old school, like Running Man, like
Yes.
LMFAO, kind of like that kind of crazy dancer. I don't even know what that kind of dance is technically called, but that would be my go-to. The shuffle is that called the shuffle or something like that? Yeah.
Yep. Every day with
that would
shuffle.
be my thing.
Okay. Yes.
Yep.
I would hit him with the little sprinkler.
The sprinkler.
What's next for Zach? Are there any projects that are coming up that you're working on that we should keep an eye out for? Anything like that?
So late last year, I did a feature film based off of a book that hopefully is in post-production right now. I don't have an air date for it yet. It's based off of the book called Shoulda, Woulda, Coulda, which is a romantic comedy. It'll be kind of Hallmark-ish. It should be on a video on demand. I play one of the lead gentlemen in that. There's two of us. So I'm one of the love interests. Let's see, what else? I recently auditioned and tested for a daytime television soap. And so I'm hoping that might come through in the next month or two. I should be hearing about, hopefully, fingers crossed. But obviously with NDAs and everything else, I can't say a word. But let's just say if I get it, you'll know about it. How about that?
I love it.
So, and then obviously I've been auditioning for audiobooks and all sorts of other, projects that my agent has been getting me out on. So fingers crossed this year will pick up a little bit. Obviously things were really slow with COVID, even though I was fortunate enough to get on like The Other Black Girl immediately following that. And then a couple of the modeling projects and audiobooks kind of helped me stay afloat during that period of time when the actors strike hit. So now let's see the industry kind of pick back up again.
I forgot about that. Yeah, it took a dip with COVID and the strike. Wow, I forgot about that.
3.5 years, I would say, of just bad. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Well, I appreciate that you were able to go ahead and share what you could. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day, joining me on the podcast. You're forever a friend of the show. I've just sworn you in. Plug yourself in. Where can people find you, follow you, get in touch, see future projects? Where can people follow Zach?
Probably Instagram is the easiest. So you can just type in my name, Zach Bostrom. I think my tag, I should probably know this by now, right? I think my tag is Z Bostrom. But that's probably the easiest. That then links to my Facebook fan page as well. And then obviously my IMDb is there. Obviously things have to be in production before I can post anything on IMDb, and then it has to be authorized and all that kind of jazz. But normally if I'm allowed under NDA and stuff like that, then I can go ahead and post, notifications in regards to what's going on with my life and all that jazz.
Yeah. And if not for anything else, they can stay up to date with seeing your dogs,
Yes.
you stay in shape. So if not for anything else, they can go ahead and follow.
If nothing else, you can see my day-to-day lifestyle. That is very true. I try and share some personal stuff on there, to keep people interested. And if things are slow, then you still have the idea of what's going on, what I'm doing, what I'm training for, etc.
Yeah. This, before I sign off here, has anyone ever called you Z Boss?
Yeah. So that's where I kept that tag or whatnot, because a couple people have. So I use that as a nickname type thing for different programs and such.
Yeah, gamer tag or whatever.
Yeah, gamer tag. There you go. Discord, all that kind of stuff.
Nice, nice. Well,
Yep.
that is going to do it for this episode of the Reyes Reflection Podcast. Big thanks to our sponsors, A-Rave Cards, Jocko Fuel, Mad Rabbit Tattoo Aftercare, and Smackin' Sunflower Seeds for supporting today's episode. Zach, thank you so much for jumping on. And to all our listeners, remember, may you live, may you love, and may you thrive. I'm Oprah as a dude, and I love you all.